Hello and welcome. My name is Angelique, and today we're going to be talking about Mercury and Scorpio as it relates to astrology. Thank you so much for everyone who has liked and subscribed. Thank you. I appreciate that. If it's your first time listening to me, I'm an astrologer of over 30 years with a background in counseling, psychology, mental health. So I love to dive deep and using astrology to do that. So, not just as a predictive tool, but astrology is so much more and can be used to learn about ourselves, uncover unconscious patterns, our relationships, career, our physical health. There's so many things that astrology can be used, and I love doing that, especially through the lens of mythology and symbolism, which I'll be touching on today. So, if you have Mercury in Scorpio, or you're just looking to learn a little more about astrology, this episode is going to touch on the communication style, also the interest of someone with displacement Mercury in Scorpio. So I like to look at the sign first, get into the mythology, and I'm not going to totally get into the mythology today. If you want more of a background on Scorpio and the mythology as it relates to it, I have an episode, a podcast episode, Sun and Scorpio, where I talk more about that. But Scorpio is ruled by the planet Pluto, and I know it's not technically a planet anymore, but I'm using planet just for this. I'm not going to call it a dwarf planet. Oh, Pluto. But that's more modern astrology. Traditionally, when astrology first came to be, its ruler was the planet Mars. So while I'll be talking more about Pluto and having that encompass the communication and interest, Mars is still going to be in there a little bit. I feel like traditional rulers still can help kind of flesh out a sign and give it a little more depth, but I am going to mostly talk about Pluto. So Pluto is named for the Roman god, the same name, god of the underworld. He was bestowed to be in charge to rule over that domain of people who would die and pass on into the underworld. So when we think of interest, Pluto is somebody who is very interested with merging completely, totally consuming someone. He had one wife. He was one of the rare Roman gods that didn't have lots of partners and wives. He was completely monogamous, and he wanted to there was an intensity to him. And so the interest of someone with Pluto is, if it's not deep and it's not intimate, it's probably not going to be interesting. So Pluto wanted to get to know this person, wanted to consume, to have, to possess, and also really wanted to, well, their domain was the underworld. So everything that had to do with death, transformation. So the interest here for Pluto is going to be, it's going to give this energy to the sign that it needs to be something that they can really dive deep into, something that has a lot of depth, something that also is about transformation or intimacy, anything where you are connecting totally in a very vulnerable state with someone else or something else. That's how this Plutonian energy is going to show up in Mercury. And then when it comes to communication, like I said, the intensity and the depth of Pluto in the story of mythology is somebody who was very possessive and wanted to be deep. So that communication style is going to take on this flair of sharing communication that is mostly deep or intimate or hidden in some way. So they like to talk about things that are maybe are definitely not on the surface, but also it can just be they have a mysterious communication. You might have someone that has Mercury Scorpio, but you might not really know what they think or their ideas or what their interests are. So there's this protective, even hidden or mysterious quality to people of Mercury and Scorpio. But if we're gonna just squeeze in a little of the Mars mythology here, because it is the traditional ruler of Scorpio, what that will look like is interests that are intense or passionate, competitive. There can be that nature here with Mercury and Scorpio because of this. So they might really like to compete with other people when it comes to knowledge. So thinking of game shows, thinking of trivia, is those escape room type style games. So anything where their knowledge can put them ahead of other people or they can win can be something that's very interesting to them. That Mars flare also gives this communication style for people with Mercury and Scorpio, kind of a passionate edge and even more intense edge, but it can be that conflict can arise around their thoughts, their ideas, how they communicate. So they might ruffle feathers of other people, so to speak, because of how passionate and protective they are about their ideas, their thoughts, their interests, because they can get so close and wanting to consume and protect what they find interesting, what they're curious about. So if someone tries to really poke at it or say like what you're interested in or what you like is if they call it like stupid or not appropriate, that's when there can be some verbal aggression or conflicts, quarrels. So because of that nature, that potential to have these arguments with people, they might hold up. So they might be very, very quiet or reserved because they don't want people to see what they are thinking about or wanting to know what they are interested in because it can be it's a very vulnerable spot. So they might feel very um, exposed and potentially someone might not agree with what they're talking about. So we see that with this placement a lot too. So symbolism for Mercury and Scorpio. Mercury, while it is a mixture of air and earth, I'm focusing more on the air energy just because we're talking more about communication and interest. So we have air mixed with water. Now, Scorpio is water, but because of that Mars quality, that's there too. You have this interesting nature. You have this push and pull of curiosity, wanting to talk, wanting to express and share from air. But water makes people a little, especially in the sign of Scorpio, it might be that you're protective more. You more want to wait and see, or just really observe information, people talking before you jump in and share information. And then with Mars here, just a little bit of a fire quality. So I think of the phrase poking a bear. So it might seem that someone Mercury Scorpio is very um, docile, introverted, shy, and just you might not see it coming. But if you try to dig too deep too quickly, or make fun or make light of something that they're interested in or how they communicate, or you try to be a little too jokey, um, we might see like an aggressive, verbal aggressive, or a snapback. So that's always a possibility with Mercury and Scorpio. But these are your investigators. While water is more fluid and likes to go with the flow, it has a certain rhythm to it that it would like to continue and maintain. It finds its flow and it doesn't like to change too much. But when you have air that comes in here, can really disturb water in a way that doesn't feel good. And Scorpio in this placement with Mercury is going to do just that. Like it has its own flow, it's learned to do things, but if there's information that contradicts or uh, someone with this placement is being told that they need to change their communication style, or someone's really trying to get to know them before they're ready, that can really disturb them. And this can either mean they completely close off from that other person, or they go on the attack and there might be a verbal sparring. So it's going to depend on the person. And this is just one point of a whole chart. So it's not a total picture, but this is just an idea. So the interest of someone Mercury and Scorpio, just defining it a little more, is stuff that's deeper or has depth. And depending on the culture where someone grows up, it can be what is naturally taboo for their culture, and that's going to depend. But death is something that might be very fascinating and interesting to someone with Mercury and Scorpio, even to the point that they might work in fields that revolve around death. This it could be surgery or a funeral home director, embalming, anything like that. But it can also be metaphorical death. So, what is so deeply transformative? So, they might be interested in people who have these big life changing experiences, like UFO encounters. But this can also be people who've experienced trauma, or if they've experienced trauma, working through helping people who have experienced this, or even researching it. So, science, especially when it comes to research, can be very, very interesting for people with placement because they get to dive deep and explore. And if it's something that has to do with death or sex, that can be even more interesting because these are the realms that Scorpio rules. Remember, Pluto, that god, he wanted to consume his partner, wanted to be totally intimate. And one of the most intimate things you can do with someone is have sex. So anything that is about intimacy or sex, so any type of research on that, or just interest in hobbies, films, TV, music that take on that type of flair. So they might be more interested in talking about or exploring things around death or sex. Pluto, as it relates to Scorpio, also rules taxes and money. So this can also be something that they are just very interested in, or maybe they work in the field that has to do with taxes, inheritances, because these are things that are totally connected to people. Anything that's just, it can be intense as well, intense, deep investigative work. So law enforcement, detective work, journalism, this could also be working in fields such as archaeology, fields that require just like excavation and digging and deep. You can also make great photographers because of the water energy of Scorpio here. So, this reflective quality, inquisitive, but also intuitive. It's a very deeply emotional placement in the realm of ideas and thoughts of communication. So, and that's because photography, any type of art, but especially photography, is you're trying to capture something that might be hidden and bring it to light. Whether that's you're literally taking a photo of something that most people don't see, or you're trying to bring forward hidden emotion, things that people can't say, their personality, their behavior, and have it come through in a photograph. So the communication style touched on a little bit, but people with this placement, Mercury and Scorpio, are going to have more of a wait and see, observant nature. So they want to share when they are ready, and usually that is not right from when they meet someone. They might be a little more suspicious and might not say a whole lot, might be a person of few words. So, interacting with somebody who is very, very talkative, or they only want to talk on the light, surfacey social things and never get deep can be hard and maybe a little off-putting for them. They can tend to get on easier in with other people that have more of a slow, thoughtful approach to how they communicate, or that this other person also likes to talk about deep topics, uh, deep things, more intimate things, would like to get to there. So they might just have an easier time. This is a placement that um, might might have more difficulty in like team environments, in relationships where they're not, should we say, really compatible intellectually with someone else. So they might not be able to fake it as much as some of the other signs. So in a work environment where they have to like work on a team or work in pairs, it can it's either going to go really well or it's not going to go well at all. So a lot of people who have Mercury Scorpio work in these more solo, independent fields, or they work by themselves, or like the example I gave, like archaeology. They're doing some type of intense work that is usually alone or by themselves, or they're with other people that think like them and like really deep work. So might have few friends and close confidants, but those are going to be more deep and rich than if they were to have a bunch of friends. Like they are not people that are very interested in talking to other people that don't want to go deep or just want to talk more surfacey level. That can just it can feel like a nuisance, honestly, for Mercury and Scorpio people. So it's important with people with displacement that they find an outlet for their curiosity, especially in more hidden, intense, or taboo things. So, reading books, podcast, doing investigative work on their own, even if it's just like a video game where you have to figure something out, or just whatever they find to be transformative and intense. Really, anything that they might borderline be obsessed about can be a good path to follow when it comes to a hobby or a job. So they just might be more interested in it, if that makes sense. Okay, that's what I have today, Marketing Scorpio. If you have this placement and you like to share how it comes up for you, you can leave a comment. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for listening. Bye.